Why in 2017 does Liverpool the city, does Liverpool the people, and does Liverpool now the football club since February ban the Sun? Why does it boycott the Sun? Why does it refuse to engage with the Sun newspaper 28 years after the Hillsborough disaster? They're questions that are being asked right now. Roger Alton has written a piece in the Spectator this month arguing that Liverpool are wrong to ban the Sun, are wrong to turn away the journalists from Anfield and from Melwood. I would argue that they're right. I would argue that the city has every right to continue to boycott and ban the Sun, and this is why. The media matters. People are influenced by the media. People will argue the opposite, that it doesn't and that they're not, but they are. And that is why, you look at journalists on Twitter, they're followed by millions of people. Millions of people visit newspaper websites, and millions of people still actually buy newspapers in 2017. But in 1989, newspapers were a primary source of information for people in this country. 4 million people read The Sun. 4 million people potentially trusted The Sun, believed the stories that were among their pages. No person can stay on top of the news agenda in this country. There's too much going on, there's too much to learn about. You rely on newspapers for information, you rely on journalists to tell the truth, and you rely on editors of newspapers to be responsible. And that is why in 1989 it was an important moment in history when the Sun reported what happened at Hillsborough and the claims from the police as the truth. Liverpool fans forced the gate, they said. Liverpool fans were drunk, they said. Liverpool fans had no tickets, they said. Liverpool fans beat up brave coppers, they said. You know it oh so well now. The famous front page, or the infamous front page from the Sun in April 1989, just days after people had lost their loved ones, just days after that disaster in Pen 3 of Leppens Lane. Those lies were disseminated by senior police officers, by a Tory MP, and other newspapers reported those lies, but they reported them as claims. They followed up the story the next day with different stories that told a different story about what had happened. The Sun called it the truth. The Sun stuck by that story, and the Sun followed that up with other stories, lesser known stories now in 2017. Stories like this. This story claims that some Liverpool supporters stole from a pub after the publican helped the supporters on the day. The story describes them as yobs, as louts, as hooligans, and that dirt stuck. That stuck for nearly 3 decades. Anyone who's from Liverpool has had to endure the dirt that was thrown by the Sun, thrown back at us year after year. Claims that we lied, claims that we're murderers, claims that we were responsible for what happened at Hillsborough. And that is why feelings still run so deep. And that is why the Sun is still boycotted to this day. The editor of the Sun at the time, when the newspaper was produced, that said the truth on the front page, was Kelvin MacKenzie. The other headline that he was going to go with that day was "You Scum," which shows the kind of bigot that Kelvin is. He continued to edit that newspaper for 15 years. He continues to write a column for that newspaper to this day. He apologised. He's apologised several times, but he's also admitted when he was caught off guard at a business lunch that he didn't believe in 1 minute in what he was saying. He's since tried to portray himself as a victim. But if the management of the Sun really cared about this city and really cared about the people who live in it, would they continue to employ Kelvin MacKenzie? I don't think so. People wrote to the Sun at the time. They complained about that headline. Someone called William Newman, who was the managing director at the time, he wrote back and he said, if the price to pay for telling the truth is a boycott, then so be it, we'll pay that price. They didn't tell the truth, but it was the attitude that comes with it. Those letters are freely available. They're out there now. The Hillsborough Independent Panel report. You can see all this. It's out there. It's freely available. But who goes digging for it? What's easier to do than go digging for it is to knock what goes on in Liverpool, is to say that we're wrong. But we're not. We're right. And they've never, ever apologised in a true fashion. They've never said... No one from the Sun has ever come out and said, we helped to influence the national consciousness against Liverpool, the city, the people. No one's ever come out and admitted that, and that was the case. They made the fight for truth and the fight for justice, which goes on. The Sun made that harder. The Sun made that more difficult. even to this day, you have people who sing at football matches that the sun was right and we are murderers, and that just shows you the influence that's had for 28 years. In 2017, after a fresh inquest has concluded that the fans at Hillsborough were unlawfully killed and that the supporters who attended on the day played no part in that, it's easy to conclude that there is an appetite now for justice and for truth about Hillsborough. But for so long, that was not the case. The Hillsborough Independent Panel it led the way in achieving where we are now. But for a long time, after those headlines printed by the Sun, there was no appetite for this. There was no appetite at all for it. The country turned its back, and you had a small group of dedicated families, of dedicated campaigners who kept on going. At every door, people said no. Doors were shut in the face, another legal avenue closed, but they kept on going, they kept on fighting, they kept on looking for what they knew to be the truth. And eventually they got there. But 27 years that took, 27 years. And the Sun played a huge part in telling the wrong story, telling lies about what happened at Hillsborough. And they made it difficult for those families. People died without ever seeing truth or any form of justice for Hillsborough. And to expect a whole city to just forget about that overnight and just say, oh, it's okay. It's absolutely ridiculous. Why would people feel that way? They feel this way, they feel this strongly because what that newspaper did, what the people who managed it, what the people who wrote for it, the fellow who edited, Kelvin MacKenzie did, it was so wrong, and it's so hard to forgive. I think the very existence of the Sun in Liverpool, in shops, and it remains in shops, it's in big chains, it's available to buy, people make the freedom of speech argument. If you really want that newspaper, you can go and buy it in this city. But its very master, its very existence, seeing that newspaper, it generates anger, it generates sadness. And I think that's one of the reasons that you see campaigns like Total Eclipse of the Sun and Shun The Sun. They're peaceful campaigns. It's simply people knocking on doors, speaking to owners of news agents, of cafes, and pointing out to them how people feel about it, how strongly they feel, and how that newspaper, the very sight of it, can make people feel. And I think that's why so many cafe owners, so many news agents owners, they've got on board with that campaign. You see taxis all over the city now as well supporting that campaign, and the very place I'm sitting in now, this cafe, supports that campaign too. No one's having their arm twisted up the back. It's not strong arm tactics. It's a simple conversation about a newspaper that we hate, about a newspaper that we don't want in this city anymore. In 1989, the Sun didn't tell the truth. They called it the truth. They claimed it was the truth. But now everyone else knows what we know to be the truth. We know what went on at Hillsborough. It's a fact. It's out there, it's set in stone, and it's been agreed by a court of law in this country. If the Sun has to pay for what it did by being banned, by being boycotted, and by being treated like a pariah in this city, I think that's a small price to pay. Because believe me, the families of Hillsborough, the people of Liverpool, the silent victims of Hillsborough, of which there are many, they paid a much bigger price than a few copies of a newspaper not sold and supposed freedom of the press. Don't buy the Sun. Don't read the Sun. Don't sell the Sun. It's not wanted in Liverpool, and that's the truth.